let's talk about universal design. The term was coined by architect Ronald Mace in the 1970s as part of his attempts to create a code of accessibility for architecture in the United States. As stated by Mace, universal design is the process of designing architecture and public spaces to be as accessible as possible to anyone, regardless of physical ability or circumstances. Things such as traffic signs with high contrast text, lowered curbs or ramps, and closed captioning on television shows are all elements of universal design that have spilled over from just architecture into every aspect of life. But how does the architectural aspect of universal design fit in with live theater? How can theaters make their spaces easier to access for both audience members and actors who are physically impaired?
Hi, I'm Julia Peterson, and this is Access Design with Global Hive. Today we're going to be talking about mobility access and how to make sure your theater spaces are welcoming and easy to navigate for people at all levels of physical ability.
Before we talk about mobility access, however, it is essential to understand the concept of universal design. In 1997, Ronald Mace and a group of researchers at North Carolina State University came up with a series of rules for designing buildings and spaces that are accessible. These 7 rules became the principles of universal design. The 7 main principles are these. The design should have equitable use, meaning that the design is actually useful and appealing to people of different ability levels. The design has flexibility in use and is able to accommodate the largest range of people possible. The design is simple and intuitive, easy to understand and easy to use. The design has perceptible information, or it communicates necessary information to the user in an effective and accessible way. The design has tolerance for error, minimizing any possible consequences or problems that could arise from unintended use. The design can be used with low physical effort, meaning it won't tire anyone out who uses it. And finally, the design must have an appropriate size and space for approach and use, meaning that anyone can use it easily, no matter their body size, posture, or mobility. By adhering to these principles, a space can be made as accessible and welcoming as possible to as many people as possible. In theaters, this kind of mobility access can be presented in a few ways. Elevators that allow wheelchair and cane users to access other floors of the theater. A flat, street-accessible front or back entrance with no stairs. These entrances should be wide enough to accommodate wheelchair users easily and comfortably. Similarly, rows and aisles in the theater must be wide enough to accommodate wheelchairs and be flat enough to be navigated easily by those with mobility impairment. Some theaters even have specific wheelchair spots, which are empty spaces in theater rows that a wheelchair can be easily fit into. There are also transfer seats that are specifically built for wheelchair users to switch into during a show. Because many theaters are old and historic buildings, they sometimes cannot even do these basic accommodations for people who are mobility impaired. And while there are plenty of issues facing mobility impaired audience members, circumstances are often even more difficult for mobility impaired actors. Here to talk about her experience as a disabled actor in live theater is Terri Lynne Hudson, a Chicago-based actor, improviser, and performance artist. Alongside acting, Terri advocates for better inclusion and working conditions for disabled actors in Chicago and all around the nation.
I am a disabled actor. I was born with spina bifida, and I'm ambulatory but mobility impaired, which is a tricky place to be in because since I'm not on wheels and I do wear leg braces, but people can't always see them, I sort of pass as non-disabled, which is not helpful because that means that I don't get accommodated or I get people assuming I need less accommodation than I actually do. We need to know that we are actively welcome, not just by them saying, actors of all abilities encouraged to audition, which a lot of people throw in, and it's lip service. Some of them hold their auditions in locations that aren't accessible, and it's just not at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And a lot of the bigger houses with bigger bids have great audience accessibility. But it's, once again, not at the forefront when they think about actors. It's like they assume all actors are abled people. So, we need to hear that either it is step-free or we need to hear, There's one step through the main entrance, and there's like a back entrance that is step-free. So let us know if you need the back entrance. Someone will meet you if that sort of thing is necessary. But we need people to volunteer that information to show that they're thinking about it. That's a really big thing. And that's really kind of what you have to do. If that information isn't out there and I'm not familiar with the venue, I'm going to come at that like, these people aren't considering disabled people when they post this audition call, so I don't know how welcome I will be or how I will be treated, or if any accommodation I need is going to be treated like a nuisance, and they're going to decide that I'm a problem because I require accommodation, because that's a thing. One thing a lot of companies have started doing here in Chicago is partnering with an accessible building for like one of their shows, one of their classes, in order to get rehearsal space, etc. Because there are several like higher budget having, better venue having places that will let you do that. Disabled performers exist, disabled audience members exist. We want to participate. Accommodate us.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Terri. If you're interested in more of Terri Lynne Hudson's work, I'll be linking her website and Twitter down in the description, along with some resources about mobility access in theater today.
I'm Julia Peterson, and this has been Access Design with Global Hive. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or on our website at globalhivelabs.org for updates on accessibility news, shows, and videos. Special thanks to Terri Lynne Hudson for her invaluable insight and for speaking with us. Thank you so much, and see you next time.